Hello and welcome to SME TV. I'm your host, Angela Vithulkas. If I was to ask you which three areas of our economy have unique potential to grow or have shown themselves to be vital, would you be surprised if I said renewable energy, agri-food and the education and skills sector? Would you have offered something different? Keep watching this episode of Let's Talk News to find out. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to support us and all SMEs. We encourage you to comment. Jump in right now. Tell us what you think. But even more importantly, share SME TV. Our guest today is Michael Claessens, CEO of Regional Development Australia, ACT. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Angela.
How are you?
Very good, very good. Cold day in Canberra.
I'm very excited to talk to you because apart from my food background, and food in the capital, and we can see that on the back of the screen there with you, I also want to talk about obviously the great work that Regional Development Australia is doing. So very quickly, just give us an overview of what the RDA is, but just remind us that there are, 50 odd branches around Australia of RDA?
That's correct. There's 55 in fact. It's a network in all regions of Australia of not-for-profit companies, all funded under a federal government initiative out of the Federal Department of Infrastructure, Cities and Regions.
So that it's set up by the government, it's funded by the government, but you're an interface between government and business that you want to get involved with or that you think have a place in building the future of Australia.
That's right. Each RDA is different, but they're run by business, by local business, and mostly SMEs. So in our case, we have a legal firm on our board, local young entrepreneur, people who are working in the renewable energy industry, and we're looking actually actively for people who are in the food industry to join our committee. That's
unique to you because your branch, the ACT branch of RDA, has food as a priority.
That's right. We have been working a lot for 5 years in renewable energy and helped form a hub for the ACT government, which had at its peak around 1,500 members. We're now leveraging that into creating a food hub cluster for not just the ACT, but we're working with the next RDA, which is RDA Southern Inland, to do it for the whole of the southeast region of New South Wales.
Right. So if we look at, and just briefly, because we are talking about your branch of the RDA, how are some of the other RDAs in Australia different to the ACT one?
I think one of the catchphrases in regional development is localisation, and that really means solutions, investment that meets the needs of local communities and local industry. And each region is very different. Because of that, each RDA tends to look a lot like what the local economy looks like. So if it's a tourism destination, you'll find a lot more of the work they do will be around the tourism sector, or maybe in roads and infrastructure perhaps. But all of them hold one thing in common, or two things in common, which is in our charter, which is to help generate more investment and help generate more jobs. And so it's a simple charter, but of course, easier said than done.
So if we try to give an example in plain speak for those watching, what's your role as an RDA? You identify what the local needs are. For instance, you've said it could be tourism, it could be something else. And then you invite local businesses to participate in the conversation to get the ball rolling, or you act. Where is your role exactly when you have identified the needs of the local economy? What then do you do?
I think you said it earlier on that we are brokers, that trusted brokers. And in most markets, in most economies, in most countries, there's a lot of information around on opportunity in the market, also assistance, whether it's government or other types of assistance. And it's very noisy and very hard to discriminate about what to listen to and what can be helpful to you if you're running a small business or medium-sized business. So all RDAs, in different ways, operate in their brokering role to become trusted enough and close enough to business to know what they need and to be able to look for solutions, not necessarily within the RDA, but in some cases, RDAs themselves have the facility to help directly, but to put them in touch with other businesses looking for a partner, or a government program that seems to be a good fit for their need. That takes time, and it's about building relationships first, because otherwise people get sent in the wrong direction and can waste a lot of time and money.
Michael, is it fair to say that an RDA is a bit like Austrade, but local? But you aren't just local, because we'll get to how ACT is trying to expand overseas as well, broker that overseas connection. But that's the role of Austrade too, isn't it, to take Australian businesses overseas as a bridge, but also the other way, to bring overseas businesses into Australia?
Yeah, Austrade has a remit which is to promote and facilitate international exports, but also inward investment. So it does both simultaneously, because one tends to follow the other. The trade tends to preempt investment later on down the track. Each region has a trade start, or number of trade start people, which are people on the ground that get to know business. In our case, we're very close to our local trade start people. We meet with them regularly, and we sort of share information on opportunity.
Yep.
In some cases, it might be a referral that the local trade start person who works for Austrade can't actually help a company find maybe a new opportunity for a new facility to expand in. So the local RDA might know of certain areas which are looking for new startups to start up, or empty space where a company or a startup might be able to commence work. So it's cross referral, that's, I suppose. In a sense, each RDA again is different, but the same in the sense of operating a little bit like an investment attraction agency, or they should.
Yep.
So in that sense, we do mirror that investment attraction element in Austrade at a very micro level. And of course, state governments also are operating in that space. So we stay in close touch with Invest Canberra, also the regional investment people in New South Wales government, based out of Dubbo. So all of us sort of work together. It's not always perfect, but...
No relationship is. But
No.
RDA in particular looks at crossing over all three levels of government. You deal with very local government,
Yep.
then state, and then federal. Wherever the advantage is, or wherever that help exists for that local economy, whatever it might entail. I think that's the really important distinction, again, which you've emphasised, is that you deal with local needs, so whatever is unique to that local region, and therefore go and broker the deals to enable that investment into the local area, which in turn generates jobs. It sounds like a perfect marriage. I'm going to put you on the spot now, Michael. I'm going to quote from your local newsletter, the newsletter that you put out and the message that you write there from the CEO. I want to quote what you've written and then discuss it with you, because I think it's very poignant. So here we go. Energy. We have covered that in the ACT, you might say, but now attention is turning to water, and perhaps the need for a water hub. That would be a great advance, but it needs to be linked into both energy and food. How much water is needed for our future needs? And then you go on to say, a sustainable food hub, which is a great idea. Recycled water held by carbonised soils, feeding plants assisted by renewable energy and their technologies. A food buffer in our region of nutritious, fresh foods, generating jobs, driving lower grocery prices, building tourism and exports, making us resilient in the face of climate change and disruptions to the food supply chains. The reason that resonated with me so much is that it's so apt to right now, when the entire globe has faced a crisis that we never thought would happen in our lifetime. We've realised that we can be cut off from the rest of the world, intentionally cut off of our own making by shutting down borders, and suddenly realise that we really need to take care of business in our own backyard and make sure we have access to fresh, healthy food. Make sure that there are jobs generating out of that to keep us all employed. Look what's happening to our economy. Those are apt issues that are facing us. They were there before the global pandemic, but now you've highlighted this in the role of the RDA ACT, your role there of making sure that we have this fresh food, that it's an energy hub. You say you're moving past that. You've identified a water hub, which is another huge internal crisis we're facing in Australia. How exciting is it to be you right now?
Well, it's. I think part of our role is to provoke and to put ideas forward that sometimes don't get a hearing, and particularly in the industrial sphere. In the past, urban food production was seen, certainly by the mainstream economic departments in government, and in corporations as a hobby, an alternative lifestyle. But as you pointed out, the COVID crisis coming on the back of, in our case, we also had a terrific hailstorm which created $1 billion worth of damage, and this massive drought, not affecting this region as much. It was hit, but not as severely as the central west of New South Wales. Nevertheless, people have been hurting. That COVID effect has shaken the food supply system. Food still arrived, and certainly the shortages have been mostly driven by panic buying. But I thought it was an irony that, in fact, as we were building and promoting this idea around a new sustainable food hub here, which is being done in other parts of the world and in Australia, I used to use one statistic which was around the total number of days of toilet paper supply that Canberra actually had available, which a supermarket proprietor told me was exactly 72 hours. This is well prior to COVID coming along. Now, what that
Canberra had about 72 hours worth of toilet paper.
Correct. Now, an essential item ultimately, but in terms of food, even more important, most of our food certainly leafy greens come from city markets, and even if they're produced within 20 kilometres of the city, they bounce off city markets and come back to Canberra. So you've got food miles there, you've got time, which means the food isn't as fresh, tends to go off more quickly in your fridge.
Yes.
And you had this food security issue. Look, in the old days, and I've got a background in ag and food, I'm an economist, you really would have got laughed out of school in any conference when you mentioned food security in Australia in the same breath. But when we talk food security in this era and in this post and current COVID era, we're talking about being able to supply consistently good food locally because of the possibility that you could be serious disruptions particularly in food processing. What we're seeing is in meat processing, it seems to stand out, but also now we're starting to see some breakouts, unfortunately, in some of the inventory, some of the big stores that are held by,
that's right,
case in Coles in Melbourne. These can really impact naturally because people are then pulled out of those facilities to go into quarantine.
That's right. I think this has become a very serious challenge now to make sure that we are prepared, and we have the very trendy modern word of resilience built into all our plans now. Yep. I think the reason for that seriousness is, if we're being facetious and just talking about 72 hours worth of toilet paper in Canberra, if push comes to shove, imagine what we take for granted, which is, that level and that generation where we think food just happens to turn up in the supermarket. And it doesn't. It has to come from somewhere. Interestingly enough, though, you're joining the dots or creating this circle, if you will, where you're recognising that, we had energy issues, and that circle comes right around to also there's water, and water, soil feeds the agriculture in order for our animals to eat and be fed and drink, and for our plants and our fruit and vegetables to grow. And then it comes right around again. We're also talking about where jobs might be, where the future tech might be, where those future SMEs are.
And food has the food industry, whether it's a cafe or it's a farm and everything in between, transporting it, storing it, processing it, recreating it, it has an enormous capacity to generate jobs, part-time jobs and serious full-time jobs as well. But it's often not recognised as a holistic system. So you find in government, there won't be an area that covers the whole of the food system. It might be ag in one area or food processing in another, but you need to join the dots, as you point out. And these regional economies are very, very powerful. In our case, we've got a captive market, high income, that wants to pay for those products. And in fact, I was speaking yesterday to a company called Ainslie City Farm, which began, it's in the north of Canberra in the sort of inner city area. They began with a school farm plot, teaching the kids in the high school, Marishi College, and it now supplies a large proportion of leafy greens and herbs and spices into the restaurant industry here. They said they could supply 100 times more, and they're being begged for more product, and there just aren't the opportunities and people actually buy businesses just like it. but they're there.
So
That's what
I want to make sure that we cover off, because
Sure.
we are going to run out of time here.
Yep.
I want to say, so what is your role in helping SMEs exactly? So we'll
Yep.
take your RDA in particular. Obviously, we want to use that as the blueprint, the example.
Yes.
So you've identified these areas around where SMEs might be able to participate. So you've made that identification. If a small business comes to you and says, look, they could be a farmer, they could be a grower, they could be a cafe, what can you do for them?
Yep. Well, first of all, RDA as a brand has recognition nationally, so with the federal government. So where we are involved, federal government will listen. So we're constantly feeding back, and we have been during this entire COVID crisis, through our Minister Nola Marino, who's a senator from West Australia, actually has a farming background, about what's working, what's not working, what small business is telling us, is a challenge for them, whether it was JobKeeper payment, or whether it was the difficulty of engaging with soft loan facilities, getting the cash in the door just to tide themselves over, or a whole host of other challenges which we're well aware of. So that's that feedback that can actually affect the way programs are rolled out. But secondly, to use us to access government funding, like Entrepreneurs Program, which is a federal program, the Building Better Regions Fund, and we'll co-sponsor some of these applications that people put in. We'll help them write the grants, and in many cases we'll be successful. Not always, but it's competitive. But our branding helps a lot. In other cases, we will help companies do some basic training. It could be as simple as MyOb. MyOb, what I need to use, Xerox or something else, and we can put them in touch with people who can provide that training. In some cases, we'll do that directly ourselves. It depends. We do a lot of work in regional migration as well. We have a role there through Department of Immigration, and that I think as well, in terms of finding the right people with the right skills, is a great opportunity. There are caps, of course, applying at the moment, but over time, that's also helps us have that relationship with companies in the regions. In our case, in RDA, we don't actually do the visa work. The ACT government does it.
Yep.
But there's some of the things we do. Often it's about reassurance and encouragement. I'm finding with a lot of companies that are in strife, they need someone to talk to. And often it's just having the right advice and a little bit of nudging in the right direction to
get them started.
That's right.
So it's not as big a hill to climb.
Correct.
So just to wrap this up, as you've said, you act as the interface, or you're the broker between the SMEs and possibly other levels of government. Also, what's unique to your region is that you are looking at exporting, because you've had the airport open up.
That's correct. And there's a lot of interest in that. The Canberra Airport is one of, I believe, one of the best airports, if not the best airport in Australia. He has a big entrepreneur, Terry Snow, behind it. Steve Byron's the CEO there. And they've got now a pack fresh facility operating there. It's been going for about a year or so, which takes fresh food products and packs them onto Singapore flights into Asia. Great opportunity for local, not just local, but regional New South Wales exporters. And there are different programs and players in that space, not least the councils, of course, the joint organisation, and other programs that are being funded to help exporters. We're going to be focusing on some parts of that, which is baked goods. We think we have an expertise there through which we have, but also investment ready. I think there's a huge opportunity there to help farms and food businesses work out what sort of investment they want in the business, or if they do at all, or whether it's a commercial loan, or whether they should be looking for partners. And that's something where we think we can help exporters in particular. But before even you need help. Yeah.
I just want to cover off on one thing. If you can briefly give me this answer, it's the eternal question that is asked by every big end of town, including government. How do you reach out to your SMEs? How do you find them? A lot of networking sessions. I think I leverage off local organisations like the Canberra Innovation Network and the Canberra Chamber. But most of all, it's that face-to-face, and nothing replaces it, frankly. Zoom, it has its limits, and we just get out there, we meet people. Yep. We're sitting across kitchen tables often, and really it's a relationship. That's what we want to hear. Nothing is actually going to replace the face-to-face and the reaching out. No, nothing's going to stop that. That's the only way. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us today. We appreciate it. And we love hearing about RDA. It's going to be a new discovery for many SMEs around Australia. The fact that there are 55 of you to help open up the future, because the economy is changing, the landscape is changing. More importantly, though, there are other ways for SMEs now to grow. Please remember, for our watchers out there, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can support us and all SMEs and RDAs right across Australia to getting the message and the word out. If you have any other great ideas and you want to send them to us, you can. news@smea.org.au. And remember, share SME TV. Let's get the word out there. This is a platform for SMEs. Thank you very much, Michael. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.